What I'm going to be showing you guys today is how to make barbed wire for miniatures bases. This Kodiak here, I'm going to go with kind of an urban rubble theme. I've got some bits of broken up tile, plastic bits, just a bunch of junk thrown in with my normal sand mix. And here is the barbed wire that I'm going to teach you how to make. So let's take a look at our supply list here. Starting off, the wire. I've got 28 gauge wire here. I got it at a craft store in the beading section, where you make jewelry and that sort of stuff. So you can walk past all of the bright pink girly beads and find some wire. It's soft gauge wire, which most of it is. That just means that you can bend it. I got 28 gauge, and I also got 32 gauge. The lower the number, the thicker the wire is. And I tried it at first with a thinner wire, and it was just too brittle. It broke, it was just a pain. So I would recommend 28 gauge. Depending on your scale, you can go up or down. I'm sure you can make it work. So you've got the wire, of course, wire cutters, super glue. I'm going to be using a Dremel in this. You can do it by hand, but I really recommend using a Dremel. It'll save you a lot of time, one of the best investments I've ever made. Also, we have this little wooden dowel and a pencil that I've been prodding things with. So first things first, we want to unravel a little bit of this wire. When you first unlock this stuff, it has a tendency to freak out and a lot of it will spin off, so just kind of hold the wire down. I'm going to start off with a smaller section just so it's easier to show you guys, but you can make as long a section as you want. If you're doing it by hand, the longer the section, the longer it's going to take. But if you're using a Dremel, it really doesn't matter. It's done in seconds, so yeah, do as long as you want. So we've got this section of wire. What I'm going to do is fold it in half. So I've got two loose ends here and a loop over here. The loose ends, I'm just going to kind of twist them together. You can tie it in a knot, but you just sort of need to make sure it's not going to be unraveling very easily. So I'm just going to pinch it together like so. Next, we grab our dowel. With the loop of the wire here, I'm going to take the other end, string it through the loop, and just pull it tight. Kind of fiddle with that so it's a nice little loop that we have there. So now we have the length of wire attached to our dowel. So this is where things start to get awesome. We've got our dowel with the wire attached and our Dremel tool. I've got an attachment that is large enough to fit the dowel. So I'm just going to stick it in there, tighten it up, and there we go. So what I'm going to do is hold on to the loose end. You could use pliers. I use my fingers and I just put the Dremel on a low setting. It hasn't been a problem. So you've got one hand holding that, the other hand on your Dremel tool, and make sure that the wire is nice and tight on the dowel. Sometimes it can slip. But what we're going to do is just turn the Dremel on. I've got it on the lowest setting right now, and that happens a lot, which is why you want to make sure that you've got a nice tight loop here, that this wire is firmly connected to your dowel. So what I ended up doing is cutting a little notch in my dowel here, so when we bring the wire along, it catches and you can tug on it pretty good and it stays nice and tight. So that'll keep the wire secure on the dowel, which is really the hardest part of this whole process. So let's give it another try. So like before, I've got one hand on the wire, one hand on the Dremel, with the rod pointed towards my fingers that are holding the Dremel, or that are holding the wire. I'm going to turn it on, and when you do this, you want to do it in short bursts. If you leave it on too fast, it can get wound too tight, and it winds pretty quickly. So just turn it on for a second, let it go, see how we're doing, give it another little burst, and so on, until we have the wire at the gauge, or at the winding level that we're happy with. Give it one more shot here. There we go. That's good enough for me. just doing that, it actually did hurt my fingers there, so maybe you should wear some gloves or hold onto this with pliers. Yeah, or maybe just a pansy. So there we go, wound nice and tight, and we're ready for the next step. So now I have my wound wire, and I also cut off a strip of just the plain wire, not wound. What we're going to do is take the plain wire, start on one end, and just loop it around the wound wire, and pull like so. Then take your finger, loop it around, and tie off another section. Then do the same thing down, loop it around, and tug, and up again, and tug. So, this is really the most time-consuming part, depending on how close you want your barbs together. When you've just wound them, you can still slide them around a bit, which is where the super glue is going to come in later. So you can pack them as tightly as you want, whatever you think looks good. Just make sure you give it a nice, good tug. So, do that all the way along the length of your wire, and then we'll be ready to move on to the next step. So, here we have our full segment that I've done my little twists on. As you can see, it's done with an uncanny and machine-like precision. So what you want to do now is go through each loop and give it a good solid tug. We're going to be putting little drops of super glue on each knot, and if you don't pull it tight so that the knots are definitely attached to the wound wire, the super glue is not going to do anything, and your little barbs are going to be sliding around. And now that all my knots are tight, I'm going to come by with a bottle of super glue and just put one little dab on each knot. This will hold them in place so they don't slide around. I think I've mentioned that a few times. Nice and easy, little tiny dots. If you put too much on here, I'm sure it would clump up and look weird. Gravity is kind of working against me right now, and I think my lumps are a bit large. So now that our super glue has had ample time to dry, we're going to take our wire cutters and snip off all these little loops. So, it helps if you don't have a pair of wire cutters that are 3 years old and have been horribly abused, but you know, that's up to you. I prefer to use these. So, just go along the line, snipping off the excess. It really won't be this hard for you. I need to get new clippers. But anyway, that is what you'll end up with. You can trim it shorter or longer. I'm not a military expert, so I don't really know how long it's supposed to be. But just kind of eyeball it, see what looks good. So now that I've trimmed off the excess, you can see this is the basic barbed wire. There's a couple different things you can do with it. You know, you could string it through a series of posts, like these little matchsticks. Or what I like to do is make a coil. I'm sure there's some technical term for it, but I think it looks pretty good. So what I do is take a pencil and just wrap the wire around said pencil. You'll know that you did a good job if it actually hurts when you're doing this. If you were a tiny soldier that wasn't made of metal, I'm sure that this would actually hurt. So, just wrap it around the pencil, pull it off the pencil, kind of tweak it, and there you go. A little coil of barbed wire. As you can see on our Kodiak here. Just pop it on there, and our basing just got bumped up a notch.